Of course I think we can win, and I'm fighting every single day to win.
We've now put forward a plan that... Is that bird worrying you?
Yeah. They're afraid of us. They can see that our movement is growing.
Well, you're not going to have a stand in the parliament.
Let there be 1,000 lessons learned as far as I'm concerned.
This is the 4ZZZ Break the Election podcast for the Queensland state election in 2024.
Hello and welcome to 4ZZZ Breaks the Election podcast, just 23 days away from the Queensland state election for 2024. My name is Alexis Pink. I'm the news coordinator for 4ZZZ, and joining us today are...
Bailey,
PJ,
and Olivia,
who are from our 4ZZZ newsroom. Hello everyone, how are we today?
Good.
Yeah, doing really good, thanks Alexis.
Yeah, pretty good.
Good to hear. In this podcast series, we're going to bring you up to date on the election and break down what is being said and why. So, first story, Bailey.
Premier Stephen Miles and Queensland LNP leader David Crisafulli will debate for the first time tomorrow night ahead of the state election. The debate follows after months of campaigning from the major parties, both leaders in lockstep as they target the state's regional centres with policies on cost of living and housing crisis relief and promises for overhaul responses to health and youth crime. The debate could stand to decide the outcome of the election, with the LNP leading 56 to 46 in two-party polling and Labor hurting in rural Queensland after the agrarian minority Katter's Australian Party expressed support for Crisafulli's bid. Tomorrow's debate will be followed by a second, final meeting 10 days from the election.
Okay, so debate time. Who's excited for the debate?
I'm really excited. Pretty keen.
Yeah, that's the level of excitement we should all have for this, I suppose. So how important are debates in terms of an election campaign?
I think that it does really shape public perception on the candidates. It really does indicate, especially when the adjudicators present questions that are relevant to the publics that these candidates represent. It really does present what, if any, stance the candidates have on the issues that matter to their public, and it does speak to their character and potentially even to the character of their party.
Okay, Olivia, I'm going to ask you straight up. Okay. Would you change your vote based on the outcome of a debate?
Personally, I doubt I would. I think I personally tend to focus on the policies, but, you know, I think I could understand why someone would.
Okay, elaborate on that a little bit for us. What things do you want a candidate to say in a debate like this that would say change your mind on them?
Okay, I think just to be able to see like exactly what a candidate would stand for and how they present themselves would definitely change my view. Yeah, just being able to see that they can really stand up for what they've said that their party will do, and yeah, that they know what they're talking about.
Okay, excellent. So the big announcement in this one is the Katter Australian Party and One Nation coming out and saying that they're going to back the LNP on their preference ballots. How important is that?
I'm going to come straight out and say it. I think it is a major blow in these regional and rural areas of the state. You know, these areas that traditionally do align themselves with conservative values, and that Miles and his Labor government do desperately need. This is an endorsement coming from a minority party that generally sort of tries to keep its nose out of the business of major parties and tries to sort of stay relatively neutral in terms of endorsing one candidate or the other. And I think that also is going to be a really scathing indictment of Miles and his platform when they've suddenly decided to bite the bullet and, back the LNP. It's really not a good look, to be totally honest.
I'm going to be honest with you. 4 years of the Katters being sort of downplayed by Labor in Parliament probably hasn't helped.
I think that's definitely a fair assessment of things.
All right, we should probably move on. PJ, what have you got for us today?
Yeah, the LNP Deputy Leader, Jared Blay, has slammed Premier Stephen Miles' public sector energy plan as weird, wild and desperate. The proposed public-owned company would go head-to-head with the government-owned regional monopoly of Ergon Energy, following similar campaign promises providing cost-of-living relief, including government-owned fuel stations and permanent implementation of the popular 50-cent public transport fares. While the Premier says the plan would introduce competition and save consumers up to 6% on energy costs, Blay says it's obvious the Premier is desperate for re-election, even competing against himself to cling to power. Business Chamber Queensland CEO Heidi Cooper is also sceptical, calling the proposal inefficient and interventionist and warning it would interfere with the free market.
Okay, so let's start with Jared Blay. Yes, a politician who's making promises to get elected. I mean, I've never heard of that in an election. Sometimes I think he says things hoping for a reaction.
Yeah.
But, okay, let's take it back to the substance of this. The LNP, we foreshadowed this response yesterday. They've been talking about supply side things like Callide B and extending coal-fired power and also renewable energy project scalebacks. They want to remove that renewable energy target. Do we think that's going to have a distinct impact on the supply side of this chain?
As far as this response goes towards the proposal, it's the same platform that the LNP has been running ad nauseum for years on end. It happens with very little alteration. It's the same talking points of renewable costing too much or being ineffective or its turnaround not being quick enough to justify the offset that it does to that supply that we're talking about. It's not great. We've had supply issues as far as electricity is concerned for a while now. And, we've got commentators like the Queensland Conservation Council that are saying that even if it does address the energy supply issue, it's still going to drive up the cost of power by 36% in the next few years. So it's not exactly the most sustainable or even practical plan in response to what we're getting.
That's reasonable. We might move on to our last one, which I believe Olivia is going to present to us.
All right. Recent YouGov polls reveals that majority of Queenslanders support Green's 1% plan to cap residential rent increases to 1% per year. 66% of the 54% of majority support is from Labor voters. Only 28% of Queenslanders and 16% of renters in the state reject this policy. Greens MP Amy McMahon says she wants to make this clear to Stephen Miles. If Miles does not cap rents, he will lose renter-heavy seats like McConnell, Cooper, Greenslopes and Miller to the Greens.
Okay, so that's a big claim to make, to suggest that 5 seats are just going to fall because he won't put caps in place. But let's start at the top. Bailey, are the rents just too high?
Well, in my experience, yes. And I live in a city, as so do most of my other friends, and I think this is where it will have the biggest impact, them saying this. The rents are just really over the top right now, and with the cost of living crisis, it's quite hard to keep up with prices increasing for rent.
All right, Olivia. It mentions Labor supporters are pretty much in line with this particular thing, and Labor has not moved an inch in its entire time in government. Do you think they'll move now based on that evidence, or is there just more at play here?
I mean, possibly. It does seem that everyone does seem to really support this Greens policy to cap the rents 1%, because as we said, like, the rents just are way too high, and that is a huge issue on everyone's minds. So
who are Labor pandering to if everyone supports the policy?
Well, they'd be pandering to, I would say, those who don't live in a city. They would be pandering to the regional and...
So I'm going to add something to that. Specifically, I think they're pandering to people who are in the investor class, people who are renting properties out, the landlords. I think that might be a small target in this particular election, but they've seemed to hold on to it. Also, market interventions like this don't come with their own cost as well. It's not zero-sum cost. But, it's interesting to see how that one plays out. And that's all that we have for 4ZZZ Breaks the Election podcast today. For more updates, you can find us on 4ZZZ in our morning bulletins, Brisbane Line on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays at midday, and make sure to catch the Pineapple Rebellion at 9 a.m. on Fridays. If you want to support the project, subscribe to 4ZZZ. You can do that at 4ZZZ.org.au/support. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll be back tomorrow. Goodbye!
See you.